I hope you are ready to come rip up some paper with me today. Grab your scraps, all those old pattern papers you haven't used in a while, and let's make something really fun. Lately, I've been diving into some collage art, and like all things, I always wonder how can I use this for my scrapbooking. Today, I want to make a Christmas layout, and I want to scrapbook these pictures, and I was thinking of how I could use collage, and I thought maybe making some ornaments, since these are pictures of us decorating our tree back from 2022, and look how tiny Isabella is there. So cute. But I have all these great pictures of us decorating the tree, and I thought maybe collaging some ornaments would be a fun way to incorporate that into my page. A while ago, I followed some advice from my friend Janice Gilhooly and separated out my paper by color. Now, I didn't do all of my pattern paper, that's what she does, but I did take all my mix-ins from Close to My Heart, which had like random colors and patterns all mixed together, and separated them and labeled them by color, which I think for today is going to be super handy when it comes to just searching for the specific colors that we want. I'm thinking I want to go kind of an ombre, so like shades of green and shades of red. Now, if you're wondering where I came up with this idea, I was watching a collage class called Paint with Paper Impressionist Collage on Crafty, who is the sponsor of today's video. The instructor, Shara Olaman, was showing how to take a photograph and translate that into a piece of collage art. I thought it was brilliant, and I wanted to give it a try on a layout today. If you like to learn and try new things, Crafty is a great online resource for all things creative. They have a large selection of classes on everything from sewing and crochet to photography, baking, painting, and so much more. I've taken mixed media, photography, and cake decorating classes on Crafty, and I would like to try my hand at some sewing classes next. I have to admit, I'm a little intimidated by anything to do with fabric or yarn. I'm not exactly sure why. My sewing machine has only ever seen paper, but maybe it's time to give sewing a try. If you want to explore the Crafty community and learn some new skills, the first 1,000 people to click the link in my description box will get a full year of premium membership for only $1.49. I hope you check it out, and thank you to Crafty for sponsoring this video. I'm going to start off my process for making these ornaments by using these circles that I cut on my Cricut. They are 2.5 inches, 3 inches, 3.5 inches, 4.5, and 5 inches. So you can see I have a range of sizes, and I'm going to put 2 on the left-hand page and 3 on the right. Now, when it comes to paper, I pulled in my bag of green, my bag of red, and then I thought I'd grab some neutrals, so I brought in gray and also my wood grain pack. I don't know if I'm going to use those, but I wanted to have options. I also brought in some of my old Christmas collections because I thought that would be a good way to fill in if I want something that's a little bit more festive, at least see if there's something that will work. So let's start off with selecting some green colors. I started with this one because I like the dark pine color. It's a good tone-on-tone print. It's not too loud and busy. And I really am looking for papers that are somewhat subtle, kind of have tone-on-tone designs, nothing with high contrast or with multiple colors. I debated bringing in some that had multiple colors, but I think it's going to look better to have sort of a monochromatic. I was thinking about that brighter green, and I think it kind of goes, but I'm not sure if I want to do that or if I want to stay with more subtle tones. You can see when I hold this one up here what a yellow green that is, and that makes me see how much my other greens are very much cool toned greens. And I think the mixing the warm greens and the cool tone greens doesn't look that great. I don't think I will be happy with any of those combinations. I think I want to stay with either go all warm toned, more like yellow based greens, or go all cool toned greens. Here's one. I think this will go really good. It has sage in it, just like the one on the far right, but it has a little bit of a difference in it because it has a subtle pattern and some white sprinkled in there. This pattern, ooh, I really like it, but it has a base of Harbor, which is more of a blue-green, like quite blue, more blue than green. I'm so tempted to use it because it's a very subtle pattern and I really love it. But at the same time, I think it might throw off the monochromatic green look that I'm going for. I do like this pattern here. It has a little bit of white, black, and brown in it, but it's pretty subtle and it still reads as mostly green. So I think I might bring that one in. I'm debating this one, but I think because it has such detailed designs on it, it might take away from the overall effect too much, especially once it's ripped down into little pieces. So I think I better leave that one. Put out my all-purpose mat because I'm going to be doing some gluing and I don't want this sticking to my table. I'm using Liquitex Matte Medium because it is very fluid and it dries really beautifully. This is my favorite glue to use for collage. And I just put some in a palette and then I have my little brush here and I'm just going to start gluing my pieces on. Now, I should mention that as I am ripping, I am kind of alternating ripping towards me, away from me. Basically, I decided that I wanted to have the edge where it's white hidden. So I do try to rip it so that I don't see the white edge. So if I have the piece that I want in my right hand and I rip towards me, then it won't have a white edge, but the remaining piece has a white edge. So then I have to kind of rip that off before I move on. Or you just need to flip the paper around and make sure that the white is hidden under the next row of ripped paper. Either way, you could have the rip showing that white core of the paper, but the thing with that is that it will add a lot of definition, and I didn't want all these strips to be defined. I wanted it to sort of blend, almost like you're blending paint. I wanted them to just blend sort of seamlessly into each other. I am trying to put the glue only on the back of my piece. Some of it does get on the front, which isn't a big deal because it does dry matte and you won't see it. The only time you will see it is if you want to add ink or anything. I'm thinking I might want to ink around my edges, and the glue, if it's on top of your paper, will resist the ink. So that's something to keep in mind. But if you wanted to have it both front and back, you could. Now, I felt like I needed another shade in between these lighter shades and the deeper shades. I needed something to bridge that gap. So I pulled in a couple of different papers and I'm trying to decide what to do. And I decided to go with this one. It's from the Secret Garden collection and it's just kind of a nice medium in between the lights and the darks. And it has that same muted sort of gray undertone as well as it is a cool green, not a warm green. And the cool thing is that one side is slightly lighter. So the side with the polka dots is like a shade or two lighter, and then the back side is just a little bit deeper of the same color. So I think this is going to work perfectly for this sort of ombre look. You see I have the light at the top, and I'm just trying to blend my way down to the darkest at the bottom. How I'm deciding to blend this is just by mixing in some of the patterns. So you can see I have some of those medium ones coming in, and then I'm putting some of the light ones just to help it blend in and not be this sudden line. Now you could do that. You could do a design where you have distinct lines where you switch colors. You wouldn't even have to do it like all shades of one color. You could switch to different colors. I think there's so many different ways you could experiment and try different things with this. I also think creating a little scene on the background of your page could be really cool. Maybe do some clouds up in the sky and some grass along the bottom, something like that. This is just really fun. I would recommend ripping your paper all at one time. Like just sit down maybe while you're watching a show and just rip a whole bunch of pieces of paper. I was kind of ripping as I went, and then I would stop and rip a little bit. And you'll see when I do wrap up my paintbrush in the baby wipe that's off to the right there, that's just to keep my brush from hardening with the glue in it. So if you start by ripping all your papers all at one time, I think it will be a little bit faster and easier that way. Make sure when you're all done gluing that you wash out your brush really good. I like to use a little bit of soap and water. If I use just water, sometimes I find that I still end up with a stiff brush afterwards. So if you get some soap and water and really work it into the brush, that seems to work to save your brush. I know this is looking a bit crazy now, but I promise, just stick with me. It will pay off in the end, and it's going to look really cool when we're all done. Now here is a look at the finished ornament. I think this looks really cool and it's still going to get even better. But I'm going to stop here and I'm going to go ahead and make the rest of these off camera. I have 4 more to do. I'm going to do 3 in red and 2 in green, and then I will come back and show you what those look like. Through the magic of video, here are the finished ornaments. They dried really fast because that matte medium is very thin, but you can see how I have dark at the bottom, lighter at the top, and I just can't wait to get these onto my pages. I'm using some white cardstock here for my background. I love using white cardstock for my bases, and especially on a layout like this where we have all the patterns going on in these big ornaments. I'm going to have lots of photos on here, so everything else needs to be kind of simple so that it's not competing. Do want to add some of this pine green as a border around my page, so I'm trimming down the white 1/4 inch on one side and then a 1/2 inch on the other, so that I'll have a nice little 1/4 inch border around 3 sides. And then these two will meet flush in the middle between the 2 pages. I think that will look really good. That extra green, you can't really tell so much on the Versamat, but I think once it's in the album, that will work as a nice definition for the edge of my layout. I am also going to gut this pine cardstock. Some of my colors of my close to my heart cardstocks are starting to get a little bit low, so I'm trying to preserve everything that I can, and typically this is something that I would just cut out, but I thought I would keep it in today and just show you how I'm doing that. I'm really not being super careful. I'm leaving about 1 inch all the way around. That's generous. That's more than what I need. And that's usually what I do, is I just kind of eyeball it and go about 1 inch or so around the edges. If you go too narrow, then you run the risk of not having enough room to actually adhere it on. And I'd rather be just a little bit too generous than run out of paper. Now, before I go ahead and stick these layers together, I decided I want to do some inking and some stamping on my base pages. I think if I leave them just plain white, it's going to be too harsh for me. So I grabbed some sage ink and a blending brush, and I'm going to start in the top corner and just kind of work my way around a little bit. I'm not going to go all the way around. I'm just going to go around sort of that top corner area. I'm trying to be careful not to add too much ink or to get too overzealous with it and end up with a bunch of dark spots. There's a couple areas where you could see it's just a little bit darker, but that's fine because I'm going to stamp over it. But I wanted to make sure overall it's quite soft and just kind of fades off into nothing. I'm bringing in some pictures just so I can get an idea of how far around I want to go, because I'm going to cluster my photos in the middle of both of those pages and kind of stack them up on each other. For the stamping, I'm going to use this one from Greenery, this pine bough. I think it'll look kind of cool, almost like the tree is kind of just wrapping around the edge of the page. And I'm using sage ink because I didn't want it to be really high contrast. Once this dries and fades, it'll be a very tone-on-tone sort of look. And I'm going to add some first generation, so like full color ink. And then I'm also going to stamp off and add some lighter little pine branches so that I have some variation in my cluster here. I am spending a little bit of time rotating my stamp and trying to decide on the best angle, because I'm trying not to overlap too much so that it looks messy. And I also don't want to have my branches going too much in different directions because that will look messy and kind of awkward. So I'm just kind of going stamp by stamp and trying to fill it in as best I can. I went ahead off camera and did the other page as well. I love how this is looking. It's so soft and pretty. And now I want to add some special treatment to the ornaments. I feel like they're very flat and they could use some dimension. So I'm grabbing the Scarlet ink pad here for the red ornaments, and I'm going to go ahead and give them some shading. So this is the part where I said if you get glue on top of your paper, this is where it's going to matter if you decide to ink over top. So if you end up getting glue on top, totally skip this step, it'll be fine. But I think for the most part, I don't have a ton of glue on top, so I thought it'd be fun to make them look a little bit more dimensional. I did decide to put my shadows all on the same side. So they're all kind of at the bottom and wrapping around that right-hand side. And that way I thought it would look good on the page if my shadows all line up. then, technically my light source is coming from the top left. It really, I don't think matters that much, but in my head, that was my rationale for it. Next, for my green ornaments, I'm going to use Close to My Heart Pine. I'm using these ink colors because those are the colors from the paper. So use whatever colors of ink match your paper. And I'm going to repeat this and do the same thing, ink it around the bottom and the right-hand side. Now, I can't resist adding some sort of bling or shine or something to these. You could spray over them with like a sparkly mist. I'm going to use the Spectrum Noir liquid gold paint markers. I love these things. They just say Christmas to me. So I'm using the broad tip and I'm just going around the edges of my ornament. Now this is paint, so it doesn't dry instantly, which means you need to put them somewhere and just give them a minute to dry. They don't take long, but don't go and set them on top of your layout because you'll probably get some transfer. I'm going to go around all the edges of my ornaments and just give them this fine gold border. I've gone ahead and laid out all my photos. I love how many I can fit on here, even with these really large embellishments. It is really rare for me to not use photo mats, but the spacing was pretty much perfect for me to leave a little white gap between each photo, which basically act like a photo mat. And it also saves on paper, which is nice. I'm using my T-ruler to try and help me get a nice straight line up to the top of my page. This part I was kind of nervous about because how am I going to get this to be perfectly straight and even and right in the middle of the ornament? But it turned out okay. I went in with pencil first just so I could check my work because I wanted to make sure that it looked pretty straight before I moved on to using a paint pen. I'm going to use the fine paint pen. So the same gold that's around the edge, use the same thing, but the one that has the really tiny nib on it. And I think that should work out really good. I debated using the larger one, but I think the line will be just a little bit too bold. I also want to add some shadow on the actual base page. I don't know if this step is completely necessary, but I thought I would give it a try and see how it turns out. So I'm using a pencil just to mark that right-hand side. Keep in mind that wherever you put ink over pencil, you can't erase the pencil. So make sure that that line is going to be hidden. And I'm also making sure that wherever I put my brush down, that is going to be hidden under the ornament. I'm using pewter ink because it's a cool toned ink and I think it will go better and hopefully look a little less dirty and more just like a shadow. So I'm going around and just trying to add a little bit of shading. It's hard to find that happy medium where it's dark enough to make a difference, but not so dark that it's like, whoa, what happened there? So I'm just kind of adding, checking, and I don't think a lot of it really shows up well on camera, but in person, I think it does make a difference. It makes the white a little bit softer, if anything, because I have that extra shading on there, so the white isn't quite as stark on the finished page. I would say if you want to choose between either adding a shadow on your ornaments or adding it on the page, the one on the ornaments makes more of an impact. Once I'm done with that, I'm just going to move on to adding my gold paint pen over those pencil lines. I didn't worry about the pencil lines getting ink on top of them because I'm covering them anyways with the paint. And the reason I did the inking first was just in case I did it and the paint pen wasn't 100% dry, I didn't want to smudge the paint pen with the blending brush. In the interest of time, I went ahead and did my title off camera. I used the Reindeer Memory stamp set. I just used this in my last video for a title, and this layout's going to a completely different album, so I thought that was fine. I used candy apple ink for that, and then I did the same kind of treatment. Sage ink around the edges, and then stamping the pine boughs in the sage ink as well. This really fun shape is from the Nested Essential dies from Stampin' Up. It has some really good shapes in it, and I think you can never go wrong with basic shape dies. Instead of using dimensionals, I took the die that was just one size smaller than my title piece, and I cut it out 3 times, glued them all together, and that is going to make my title pop up just a little bit so that there's not too much dimension, but it gives it a little bit of a lift. And it can't get crushed in my album because it has that nice firm backing of paper layers behind it. Now I decided my ornaments definitely need some embellishing at the top, so I have gone ahead and cut pieces to create a bow from gold glitter paper. This is close to my heart gold glitter paper, and right now I'm just curling the pieces that are going to be the loops of the bow. That really helps to make them nice and round so they don't kind of crack when you fold them over. These are die cut from the Peaceful Evergreens die set. It has a bunch of trees in it, but it also has this really cute bow. And they're super easy to make. You just glue the two little bow loops together, and then I'm going to use glue dots to attach all the pieces. So it's fine using the glue on like the paper to paper sides, but when I'm working with glitter paper and sticking glitter paper to more glitter paper, I really like to use glue dots. It makes it fast and easy. Liquid glue does work, but you have to like weight it down or hold it for a while in order for it to stick. I went ahead off camera, made some more bows, and I decided to try my hand at kind of a double bow because I felt like the two really large ornaments need something a little bit more hefty on them. So you can see there I have 4 loops on those ones and then just 2 loops for the other ones. And I love how these look. I think they will kind of crush down in my album a little bit, but that will be fine. And then instead of just leaving them plain with a bow, I add some greenery. I had a whole bunch die cut from pine cardstock just in my stash. And so I'm adding 2 pieces of greenery to each of those little bow clusters. This is from an older Close to My Heart set, but I think any kind of little greenery here should work. You could even do like holly and berries on here, just a little something. Now I felt like it needed just one more thing. These iridescent foil gems, they're really pretty. They have like gold flakes on the inside, and they're not super blingy, but they add some sparkle, they add some shine without taking over. And I'm just going to cluster them around the ornaments, kind of around the top of the ornaments to add some movement along the page and just fill in a little bit. I should also mention I took my ruler and a pencil and drew some journaling lines on that right-hand page at the top. I will go back later and write in my journaling because I do want to tell the story about how stressed out we were that Isabella was going to break ornaments. She just wanted to put them on all by herself, and it was a little tense. And then Frankie was dealing with his anxiety by chewing on Cody's pants. You can see on the top left there, he's like got a good grip on his pocket and he's just chewing away, and he'll keep chewing until he makes holes. He doesn't do this very often, but every once in a while he just gets in this really chewing mood. And now we have fixed that problem because Cody has a special shirt that he can put on that's already shredded, so he's not ruining any clothes by letting him chew. And yes, in case you were wondering, he is a very spoiled dog. He's definitely the baby of the family. And that is the finishing touch on these pages. I am super happy with how these turned out. They have a lot of detail, a lot of interest, but they're not too busy because I kept everything else pretty simple on the pages. I love that I was able to fit so many photos, and these are just really fun to look at. Isabella has been eagerly waiting for me to finish so that she can see them. I hope this gave you some ideas for your own projects, and I hope you'll try out this collage technique. I think there's so many different ways you could use this, and it's a great way to use up some scraps. If you want to see my most recent Christmas video, you can click on this video here. Please subscribe and give me a like, and I will see you again very soon.